When you start and diving into the I5, I think when I first engaged with the framework, it was a little bit overwhelming in the sense that I thought, oh, I need to address all of the I5 like in one go, and I have to make sure that everything is, like ticked, like a tick box exercise. And I think that is something where educators can maybe think about like starting small and collaborating and so on, so that, like, let's say the entry barrier is not that high. And that makes it also then easier if they have an easier start to engage their students specifically, so that they provide also more context. Let's say if they have been more on the, let's say, traditional side of teaching and learning experience. So let's say if their formats have been more like lecture formats where they have been occupying most of the space and time in terms of talking in the classroom. And so if they shift to more, let's say, unconventional methods like the I5 usually invites you to, then I think it's also important to share that with the students and say, okay, we're trying out different formats, new formats, also making sure that because these formats and the way of interacting with students is also quite different, I think creating these safe spaces is very important, because you also invite the students to share more, which they might find very odd to have this like rapid shift somehow, and giving them enough like time to adjust to the new format, and also offering enough space to reflect and debrief if you had like more intense reflection exercises, or if you had exercises that were more personally challenging, maybe where students had to bring more of their own selves to the classroom. That can be difficult, I found. And also maybe thinking about when we talk about engagement, we always want more engagement with the students, but then also leaving space for the students that are maybe not engaged in terms of speaking the whole time, but there are other forms of engagement where students are maybe a little bit more, taken back or more quiet. And I think there needs to be also this kind of space in the classroom. So even if, let's say, they're not engaging as much in terms of talking, being more involved in these kind of newer formats, that lecturers and like educators don't get like upset and say, oh, I tried this and that, but that maybe also this format allows more to bring your own personality, and not like only value engagement as like time that I speak in the classroom from the student perspective. And I think that is a new way of approaching also how different students process different learning experiences. And I found that quite valuable. And I think the I5 gave me more room to see what works and what doesn't, and where do I need more engagement in terms of active engagement, maybe even, yeah, let's say, going outdoors, doing improvisational theater with the students, and where maybe I balance it out with the next week being more reflective, being more centric towards like the self of the student, and not like that outgoing, not that interacting with the other students to just process these like varieties. And I think that is something that helped me understand the I5 framework, and also understand better the engagement with my students, and how many different forms of varieties or options I actually had to do that. So I think, yeah, just like trying out new things, but also seeing how that resonates with the students in case you are doing this for the first time, helps. And then also understanding the students better, their backgrounds. And I think that takes a lot of time if the communication in the classroom previously had been more unidirectional from the teacher to the learner, and not the other way around. So yeah, I think that was the engagement aspects that I was reflecting on when bringing the I5 to the classrooms the first times. I mean, there are formats that maybe lend themselves a little bit more to also engaging those in terms of coming out of their shell, if you want to say so, for the more introvert students. But for me, necessarily, like, I don't think that, oh, if the student was quiet the whole time or whatever, that they are less engaged with the content and everything. But I think there are formats that challenge students more, or introvert students more, to participate in certain exercises. And so I make sure that if I identify students as being more introvert versus extrovert, that I also make sure they have enough time to get comfortable with certain exercises that might be more challenging. Yeah, but I think that is something to be more careful about anyways. I haven't still found my like 100% perfect pathway that I like to pursue always. But then, I do think that this is very important to keep in mind, that there are different, personality types also, and that not every student needs to speak all the time. So that is also when assessment forms are created, especially also around the I5 methods, that I always want to caution also my fellow like colleagues that if they want to grade assessment and engagement, that active engagement should not only be like speaking time and contribution in that specific regard. So I usually rather like to take that out of the evaluation if I can. I think
how can you distinguish?
Yeah, I think what makes it clearer for me is also when they're not like busy with like other tools. So I'm not like or I'm still allowing like laptops and phones in the classroom. I know that some of the colleagues have not done that or have tried other pathways of discarding these kind of items. But then I think when they are attentive and also by observing the content or observing the discussions in the classroom, are not distracted by anything, and that you can really see like in their gaze that they're following you and not like daydreaming or something like that. I think that then you can see that they're engaging, or if they are taking notes or whatever. So that is something where I usually can see where or when students are more or less engaged in that specific way. Sometimes the students might pull back or might not be as engaged due to very different reasons, right? So maybe they just had a bad day, maybe something happened on their personal like level. If that happens more like, let's say, frequently, then I might go to the student and talk to them, but of course only like after class and like seeing what is going on with them. But also like in that specific way, if let's say the engagement is just like withdrawing from time to time, or if I see that, let's say, more of the students are withdrawing at the same time, then I know, okay, maybe something is off with like form of engagement that I'm using. Maybe they are either confused about what they should do, they are not comfortable with doing what I want them to do, and then I usually react to that and say, okay, can we do it like this? Do you have any hesitation? Why is that the case? So yeah, but it's different way of being very careful about the body language and also responses from the students that you get. And that's not so easy to detect. And I wouldn't say that I grasp it like all the time, but then I try to be more observing how the students respond. And also when, let's say, the energy drops and where I see, okay, this has been enough content, they cannot process any further. Then I try to also pull back a little bit and say, okay, maybe we just have a break, or maybe you want to jump in with questions or reflection and so on, instead of like pushing through the last couple of content bits before we get on. Yeah. And I think we're also usually, like as educators, not really trained in that way. So it's more like always on the, okay, how do I convey like content knowledge, but not any other types of knowledge creation, or how we can even engage with the students in another format. So also all these like very creative pedagogics, at least in Germany, I can say, like, I have never been trained in any of that, which I find quite sad if you think about it. It's important to let the students know. I think many students have a lot of hesitations about doing something wrong, and they're like always like hesitant to maybe share their ideas, share something like more personal. Usually what I do is create safe spaces by going first, so that I share personal things about myself, and that makes it also easier for the students to develop this certain level of trust that they may need, because then they can get to know me. So not only from a teacher or like professional perspective, but know me as a person. That, of course, is not something every educator is feeling comfortable with, because they want to separate between like the personal self and the professional self of them in the classroom. But for me, that has always worked very well. So I usually share with my students that I'm going like that I'm an activist, that I go to protests, that I like engage in certain types of movements and so on and so forth. And then they can already understand, okay, this is like how I, act usually aside from my professional life. And I think especially when you teach something related to sustainability, they do find it very important that you're authentic, in a sense that you are not only coming and teaching sustainability related content, but that you also act upon this yourself. That has been my perception, at least in that sense. So yeah, the safe spaces I think can only be created if you go first yourself and then reveal more about your own personality. Then if you have exercises, let's say that you say, okay, that's not right and wrong. This is more of an explorative space. Yeah, we're just like all coming here and trying out something new. If you feel uncomfortable, you can like withdraw from the exercise anytime, or if you feel like today is maybe not a good day to talk about certain sensitive topics, then it's also fine. Just like let me know. Yeah, so these kind of things, and kind of working also with the disclaimers maybe first before introducing certain exercises. Yeah. When I think about learning spaces, I think sometimes I'm also more reflecting on the physical side of learning spaces. So how do learning spaces actually look like? And most of the classrooms I've been teaching, the setup has been fairly similar, and I'm not sure it's really the optimal, let's say, design for classrooms. It's still like either the auditoriums and you just only like sit in these like rows, or it's like seminars. Okay, then you have like at least desks, but then still it's somehow not really flexible. And I find that the learning environment is either easier for the students to also spark their imagination if the setup is also quite different. So that you have movable furniture, that you can set up also workshop kind of setups with small discussion groups, maybe different seating groups with like something more like these how are they even called? These like kind of different seating arrangements, and like these like little corners where it's like a little bit more cozy, that you can even lie down. Sometimes I've seen a very interesting setup of new classrooms, which I find quite interesting to experiment with. And then I think in general also taking learning outside of the classroom is very important. So just going outside. I take sometimes the students also out for a walk, and then we discuss outside. And that is, of course, especially inviting if you want to do reflection anyways, and then you can go on walks. And most of the time students are very disturbed if I suggest something like that. But then afterwards they really enjoy it. So also the walks, and if you have a park nearby or something like a forest, that is of course even nicer when you can also take the learning experience there. But also more, let's say, spaces for collaborative work, where students can also work with shared screens, more comfortable seating, like writable walls where they can scribble down notes. So whenever I can, I try to create more of this kind of workshop format, where like the spaces are also a little bit more open. And I feel that the students really like that. And sometimes they say, oh, I'm like so used to hiding behind my laptop and sitting like at the desk. And that is the same kind of repetitive format for all of the classes. So I was really surprised that we were also standing up and walking around in class today and whatever. So I find that quite interesting and would like to incorporate that more, but that also requires that we move a little bit away from the PowerPoint. I think that's not doing us a great service at the moment. Yeah. I like experimentation, and if I could, or let's say if I would be the dean of the faculty or whoever would be then in charge at the respective institutions, I would challenge also my faculty a little bit more in terms of experimentation day or something, or experimentation week, where you try out something new that you have maybe not tried before and that you maybe always wanted to try, but either didn't have the courage, the time, the ideas, how you could implement it. But for myself, it's more the arts-based innovation. So I use visual arts or pictures, images most of the time to start discussion with the students, or even ask them to engage in drawings or whatever to just depict some of their opinions. But I want to move further into these different types of arts-based pedagogy. I have recently tried also improvisational theater in the classroom, which worked really well. I was quite surprised. So I know that a lot of my colleagues in India are doing great stuff around theater pedagogy. So this is really amazing. I think, especially in Germany, we are very, very far away from these approaches yet, but I would like to explore more of them. And especially for like music and dance, I'm still like thinking about it, and that has been an idea in my mind like for I think 2 years now. I haven't started it yet, so also for me, sometimes I need to push myself to maybe be a little bit bolder and trying something out. But I would like to think about educational dance and how that could help also to educate about certain topics that are maybe in some sort of forms very difficult to discuss, or can be a little bit more uncomfortable, maybe topics like gender equality if you have a culturally more diverse class where there are a lot of differences on how this topic is viewed, and maybe like dance as another language, so to speak, could help to engage in formats. But this is some innovation I'm thinking about, which I would like to see, but maybe students will totally hate it. I don't know. That's the fun about experimentation, I think, that you can also fail sometime. The more technical the things are getting, I think the less you would allow yourself to think about innovative aspects, and it's also more difficult, I believe. So I have not yet paired up with someone who is teaching more of these, let's say, more technical areas. So aspects that I teach are also, I think, lending themselves a little bit more to innovative pedagogy. But I'm also trying even for the technical stuff. So let's say when I'm working on strategy, like corporate strategy, I also think about visuals. I also think about using images, like which kind of picture is portraying your strategy and why, which emotions are connected to that. Connecting that to dance is, I think, a little bit far or further to connect, but then maybe just using other components, or let's say if your strategy was a piece of music, what kind of song would it be, or something like that. These things I can imagine. For dance, I think I'm still not 100% sure, because it's stretching my imagination also quite a bit. But yeah, let's see, maybe I have some ideas in the future. But yeah, for the technical ones, I usually use the art-based methods that are more toned down in a sense, so that are more approachable, if you want to say so. So maybe using some visual arts related exercise, or some methods applied to the management domain from improvisational theater, where you use exercises that are more connected to imagination, so that you are kind of narrating a story, or kind of meditation approaches even, where you're kind of conceptualizing a story together, or an interview where every person is alternating or completing each other's sentences. So these type of things that are stemming from improvisational theater, but are not, let's say, oh, you're getting on stage and performing actually something. So it's more like, if you want to say so, the applied side of theater that I'm bringing to the classroom. So I think what is for me also very important is walking the talk. So that is probably the most important aspect of sustainability leadership, so that you also show others how these like practices that you talk about can be integrated across various domains. So any type of discipline or field that you're working in, and that you are able to bridge when you're talking about sustainability as like a topic, that you can combine economic perspectives and ecological and also social aspects, and that the economic growth paradigms that we are fostering these days that they are not integrated at the expense, let's say, of ecological and social aspects, and that you rather view it from an embedded perspective. So if like the environment and society are not healthy, you also don't have an economy that is working. And so that, let's say, leaders or like sustainability leadership in itself is also challenging one, or it comes by and through challenging oneself and reflecting on current paradigms that we have, especially in management education. For me personally, when I discuss a lot with my colleagues, they're like, oh, we cannot do this because it doesn't make sense, and we have this and that assumption for management and how firms work. And then I'm always asking them, yeah, but are these assumptions still true? I mean, they have been set up probably like 30, 40, sometimes even 50 years or longer in the past, when we had a totally different society, economy, and also ecological environment. And now with all these changes, I think we need to also evolve in that paradigm, and just like being always challenging oneself is for me a big part of sustainability leadership. And also having this courage and imagination of thinking about future perspectives and thinking outside of the common pathways that we are walking along, and trying to really come up with innovation across these newer pathways, and just not, like, let's say, easily giving up on trying out new things. But also maybe at the same time, not only about like content or like doing things, but also about thinking how to spark joy and excitement in others, even during challenging times of change, and while also maybe providing more emotional guidance, allowing space for grieving, for dealing with loss, and so on. So I think there are many different layers of sustainability leadership, not only like action-wise, but also on a cognitive, but also emotional level. So, and if that comes together in a systems perspective, that is for me sustainability leadership. I do feel, yes, we do, of course, have a certain leadership position, but at the same time, I'm feeling that even in the sustainability domain, we're talking about this a lot, like how can we foster responsible and sustainable leadership also among our students. I feel that most of the time we're leaving out the students while we are conceptualizing and talking about these topics. And I think that dialogue is for me sometimes missing. But I think what we can do as educators is still that, yes, we are responsible for generating and disseminating knowledge, because we are still viewed as the so-called experts then who are talking to the students. But then at the same time still using the knowledge of the students, which is as valuable, although they just started maybe studying, to think about how they can bring in their perspectives into curriculum design, and that we bring in our experience maybe more from the pedagogical instruments and tools that we can use to think about, okay, how can we foster critical thinking environments for all of our students, and how can we provide them with a systems perspective so that they also understand the grand challenges of our time, and that they're not educated in a siloed environment where we say, oh, you're now studying economics and management, so this is all you get, so we're not providing you with any impulses or inputs from other disciplines. I think that is the biggest mistake we made for the last couple of decades probably. And I feel also that students miss, and that's also part of our responsibility, a pluralism of opinions and viewpoints. And I think that is especially something that I see also in the business and management's domain, that a lot of educators are not willing to expose the students to, let's say, degrowth or post-growth mentalities, or even thoughts, because they say, oh no, it's like too politically motivated and so on and so forth. And I don't think that's quite true. And I think students are smart enough to see which logic works for them and what also makes most sense if we say, okay, this is how we have been operating in the past centuries or years even. This is like newer emerging paradigms. This is why these emerged. And you can like pick yourself what makes sense to you, what doesn't make sense to you, why. And I think these debates just give them a very, very niche overview of certain topics. And we pretend even that anything else doesn't exist somehow. And I think that's a huge mistake. And providing these like spaces of exchange is important, and also making sure we challenge in questions not only ourselves but also the assumptions of our students, worldviews of our students, so that they can reflect together with us if certain things are still making sense in the year 2024, or if that's more a relic of the past, maybe. And so I see ourselves as like educators more as a kind of guiding partner on learning journeys, maybe like even a mentor, like something like that, but not a teacher that is like the sage on the stage and we're the ones with the power and the knowledge, and then we pass things on to our students. So I think it's more like a journey, a joint journey that we are experiencing together. So that's more my take on the role of us as academics.
Yeah. Why is the LEAP Researchers Program great? Can you explain how it has supported you on your journey and why it's a valuable experience for emerging leaders?
I think what I especially like is the great inspiration I got throughout many of the different sessions, especially our monthly calls that we had, and that I found it quite a nice learning pathway also that was designed. So when I think about, for example, sessions, I think it was in August with the bio inspiration. So a co-creative session, I found that very intriguing. Also exposed me to new tools and everything. So I found that really helpful to think about how I can integrate this in my teaching and learning journeys. But then also getting more inputs like on ecosystem mapping, regenerative leadership. So emerging topics that are not yet, I would say, mainstream. And so just being exposed to this and hearing people sharing their experiences and opinions is really, really cool. And also more of these, like, I think I remember also the session where we created our own playlists for transformative change. That was pretty cool. So there you have this like music kind of arts-based approaches where you can just by introducing even like simple exercises as that, you can create a different learning experience. And I found that very, very nice. And it was always something new that it took away from each of the sessions that we had. So I found that pretty cool. And I think also the joint cooperation and support that emerged from the program, because we are all like so diverse in terms of where we live, what are our realities and our institutions, our perspectives, and so on. And I found that, the program managed to create this like atmosphere where people were reaching out to each other. So for example, I can share that with Isabel. She was reaching out to me and said, oh, I'm writing this like piece for Academy of International Business Insights. So like a practitioner journal, and I want to talk about leadership in Africa and the inner development goals. And I see that you have done something on or for this practitioner journal. Do you maybe want to yeah, do this together. Then also I have been talking with Tatjana, and we have been exchanging on how to integrate the SDGs in course development. And I exchanged tools with her because she was just starting, and I just, yeah, coincidentally have developed a course on the SDGs before, or implemented. And so I shared like what I have found out, because I think we need to share also more what we have developed with others, because I think many people do similar things, but then they could benefit already from what is there. And then I have also briefly reached out to Francesca and connected her with one of the people in my network, because she was like, oh, I see you have been working on sustainability mindset. And I said, yeah, I even know Isabel, who is like has developed this concept. So if you want, I can connect you to her, and like, no problem. So I connected her to Isabel. So I think that is the beauty of people coming together, that you can support each other, that there are joint corporations that maybe you haven't thought about in the first place, and that just emerge while you're discussing, while you're talking, while you're finding out more of the interests and also expertise of each other. And then you can see how you can engage and use this program of bringing people together. And I think that's super beautiful. And so having this peer engagement made it very much of an enriching experience for me. And yeah, just these connections, the collaborative learning. I found also the breakouts always super nice. I think the vibe was always very, yeah, how can I say, very, yeah, very comfortable, very inspiring. People were really motivated to work on the task, but also very inspired by and driven by the topic of sustainability in general. And so I think sometimes also having the feeling that I'm not alone in this, and other people have the same issues, the same struggle, but they are also not giving up, and having this motivation is, or can help at least me sometimes to not give up when I'm facing challenging times. And yeah, so this like community aspect is, I think, very, very cool, and that you can also, while you're engaging with the community, develop your skills. Yeah, and very valuable, obviously, the new tools, and also the cognitive learning, like the knowledge that you gain, and bringing on these like very holistic perspectives on sustainability was very, very enriching for me in general. Yeah. I'm Marina. I'm from ITC Blade School of Management in Slovenia, and also from Polymundo AG, which is located in Germany. And yeah, I'm a researcher, but also a consultant in the field of sustainability.